Let's start by saying that some people think that chili powder makes the best tasting chili, and let's also say that others think that using fresh, dried, or even canned chili peppers gives their recipe that signature warmth or kick. Some people like to add kidney beans to their recipes, and others may have just stopped watching this video because I said that. But what makes my best chili? What type of chili pepper is best? And what mix of ingredients brings the best out of those chilies? Well, to answer those questions, I've examined the first 10 recipes that appear from the search for traditional chili con carne, and I've made 4 of them.
Each of the recipes I'm cooking here use roughly the same proportions of a few core ingredients: onion, garlic, and cumin. In fact, only one of the 10 recipes I looked at did not include cumin, which, to my taste, is the quintessential flavour of chili, but hey, that's what I'm interested in here. By the way, the measurements I use for each of these recipes make a generous portion for about 2 people. First, I sweat down 2 medium onions and 3 cloves of garlic in about a tablespoon of vegetable oil on medium heat until the onions begin to look glossy. In goes the 2 teaspoons of ground cumin and a quick mix before putting to one side. With the base done, it's time for the meat. 3 of these 4 recipes use lean beef mince, so for those I divide 1 pound or about 500 grams of 5% fat minced beef into 3. When I fry large quantities of beef mince, I do it in smaller batches to allow its water to evaporate more easily. It is much easier to move around the pan and prevent burger-like clumping like this. My preferred method of cooking beef mince is on a very high heat in a couple of tablespoons of vegetable oil until most of the pieces are really dark brown and crispy. Getting that browned food Maillard reaction is important to give the food its distinct flavour, which I also want to seep into the rest of my sauce. 3 of the 4 recipes also include beef stock, which I prepare in advance by chopping up a beef stock cube and dissolving in 1 1/4 cups or 300 ml of boiling water. Okay, recipe number 1. Into the onions and garlic goes 1 teaspoon of plain flour and about 1/4 teaspoon of ground coriander. Give that a quick stir before sending in the brown beef mince and 1/2 cup or 100 ml of beef stock. When that has come to a simmer, I add a blend of a tablespoon of tomato puree, 4 ounces or 100 grams of chopped tomatoes, and 2 tablespoons of red wine. In with 1/2 teaspoon of chili powder, and the same for oregano and sugar. Finally, a bay leaf and 5 ounces or 130 grams of red kidney beans. Give that a stir and it's left to simmer on as low as I can for about 45 minutes. Okay, recipe number 2. First things first, I prepare fresh coffee. I'll need about 1/2 cup or 125 ml of freshly brewed black coffee. Any kind will do, but use your favourite, why not? The coffee goes in the saucepan with the onion and garlic base and cooked beef mince to simmer for about 30 minutes. In the meantime, I take a dried ancho and chipotle chili pepper, look at those beautiful colours and textures, and halve them lengthwise to remove the seeds. Easier than I thought actually. Then I submerge them in boiling water for about 10 minutes until they soften up. The recipe actually suggested I blend them without pre-soaking, but that simply did not work, turning the chilies into jagged shards and making a total mess. For my equipment at least, the chilies had to soak in water before the blades would catch hold. After being soaked and blended, the halved chilies resemble a rough paste, to which I add a chopped green finger chili. In goes 1/2 teaspoon of chili powder, 1/2 teaspoon of oregano, and a generous 1/2 teaspoon of brown sugar, along with 5 ounces or 130 grams of red kidney beans. There are no tomatoes or beef stock in this recipe, so the saucepan seemed a little low on moisture. So before setting to simmer, I added some of the soaked chili water, which actually tastes pleasantly smoky and a little bitter, but I wouldn't recommend drinking it neat. Again, I simmered on as low a heat as my smallest burner could manage for about 30 minutes. Right, recipe number 3. Here's another type of dried chili, the Guajillo pepper, which is a dried mirasol pepper. Its skin is waxy and smooth compared to the rough and squidgy ancho and chipotle chilies, and after cutting off its stalk, its seeds simply dropped out of its skin. This pepper is much drier than the ancho and chipotle pepper, so I soaked it for an extra 10 minutes, so 30 minutes total, before adding it whole to the blender with the second half of the soaked ancho pepper from before. This recipe calls for chunks of lean beef rather than lean mince. 5 ounces or 125 grams of diced beef gets coated in a blend of lovely spices that include 1/2 teaspoons each of paprika, ground black pepper, brown sugar, and ground coriander. Sear the spiced meat in a very hot pan for a minute or so, and in goes 1/2 a jalapeno as well. In goes the blended chili paste and 1/2 cup or 100 ml of beef stock. 1/2 teaspoon each of oregano and Worcestershire sauce go in before adding the lot to a slow cooker pot with the onion, garlic, and cumin. I'll leave that on low to simmer for about 2 hours, adding fresh water if it seems a little dry. Finally, recipe number 4. This is a quick one. As with the other recipes, I start with a base of onions and garlic, followed by the minced beef. Next up is the chili pepper component of this recipe. canned chipotle chilies in adobo sauce. This adobo sauce is really thick and rich, and it's made with onions, vinegar, tomato paste, chili powder, sugar, and spices. The canning process has made the smoked pepper super tender, and it just breaks apart so easily. I roughly chop one of these canned chipotle peppers and add it to the saucepan with half a teaspoon of paprika before adding a mix of 4 ounces or 100 grams of chopped tomatoes, followed by 1 tablespoon each of the adobo sauce and tomato puree. In goes 5 ounces or 130 grams of red kidney beans and 2 ounces or 50 grams of corn kernels before leaving to simmer for 30 minutes or so. With all the chilies cooked, it was time to taste test. Now, recipe number 1. This is a mild chili that I would probably serve to members of my family who aren't keen on a lot of spice. I would not serve it to members of my family who are sensitive to any amount of chili-based heat, because the chili powder does still carry a punch even in such a small amount. Texture-wise, it's good. It's actually most like the chili I usually make myself. The chili flavour is shallow and provides probably more heat than much else. On the whole, it's not bad, but not quite to my taste. I prefer a slightly stronger chili that identifies more readily as a chili and less as a beef and tomato sauce with a little chili powder in it. Moving on to recipe number 2. Now, this recipe throws out the beef stock and any kind of tomatoes, instead getting its main source of liquid from freshly brewed coffee. I actually really like this one for 3 reasons. The thick texture combined with the smokiness of the chipotle and earthiness of the ancho chili and coffee creates a satisfying wholeness with each bite. Second, the medium heat from the chili powder and finger chilies linger in the back of your throat. I'm a big fan of that deep heat sensation that doesn't overwhelm you. Third, I like that I tried something completely novel. Without tomatoes, I was concerned it would be a bit dry, but it's not that way at all. And rather than being dominating, the coffee complements the other flavors really very nicely. I'd serve this recipe to people who like a little heat, but it wouldn't replace my personal chili recipe. I'd cook this every once in a while just for a bit of variety. Recipe number 3 is the most true to its chili con carne name. Its main ingredients are 3 types of chilies for the chili and spiced chunks of meat instead of minced beef for the con carne. To my taste buds, this chili is very strong. The sauce tastes dark and slightly bitter. Texture-wise, the sauce is pleasant on the tongue and the meat is not bad. The beef is very lean though, and even though it was slow cooked on low for a couple of hours, it's not quite as tender as I would have liked. Overall, it's not unpleasant, but it's just not for me. I do, however, think it would please a niche. People who enjoy chili a lot already and are looking to challenge their taste buds. Finally, we have recipe number 4. This recipe tastes pretty good. The paprika, chipotle chili, and adobo bring a lovely, nice, smoky flavour to the tomato-based sauce, and the corn kernels liven the dish up with little pops of sweetness here and there. But like recipe number 1, I feel like there's room for it to identify more strongly as a chili, and again, less like a slightly spicy beef and tomato sauce. I think this recipe would please the crowd who prefer lightly spiced foods and eat chili just occasionally. The standout recipe to me here is recipe number 2, the one with ancho, chipotle, finger chilies, chili powder, and fresh coffee. I absolutely love the combination of earthy ancho and smoky chipotle with the heat from the chili powder. And I feel that my preferences are somewhat justified by the fact that ancho chili and chili powder are used in half of the 10 recipes I researched for this video. As for why chili powder is equally as popular as ancho chili, well, chili powder is readily available across the globe and more practical than fresh or dried chilies, not just because of its availability, but because it's a handy way to tune heat during cooking. It's far more convenient to add an extra measure of chili powder than it is to add more fresh or dried chili. And as for why chipotle is not far behind in popularity, chipotle pepper is less common, yes, used in only 3 out of those 10 recipes, but it is always used in combination with ancho chili. From my personal taste in recipe number 4, chipotle simply doesn't bring enough by itself to stand alone. It needs the backup from its big brother, the ancho, to fill out the missing flavours, which it does so incredibly well in recipe number 2.
So in conclusion, the question should not really be which single chili pepper is best for chili con carne, but which combination of chili peppers. And based on my findings and personal tastes, ancho and chipotle chili peppers make an amazing combination. But this should not take away from how you like to enjoy your chili. Chili con carne in its purest form won't go anywhere as long as people continue to enjoy it. In fact, the 10 recipes that I sampled for this video show that the top 12 ingredients in chili con carne aren't even chili peppers. Some other variations I haven't even mentioned include plain chocolate, parsley, basil, marjoram, cinnamon, cornmeal, thyme, and bacon. It's obvious chili con carne is a widely appreciated dish, and you loving to eat it is what will allow it to prosper. See you on the next one.